faithfully delivering value and exploring great books from around the world. Hi, this is Sally talking books. Today we're diving into the autobiography of Tom Watson Jr., the architect of the IBM empire. IBM stands for International Business Machines. It was founded in 1911 by Thomas Watson Sr. Under Watson Sr.'s leadership, IBM became a corporate giant in the U.S. during World War II. After World War II, large electronic computers emerged.
Under Watson Jr., son of Watson Sr., IBM quickly transformed and caught up.
By the 1960s and 70s, IBM held 80% of the computer market share in the US. Out of every 3 mainframe computers, 2 were IBM products. In 1955, at age 41, Watson Jr. graced the cover of Time magazine as IBM's president, an honor even his father, Watson Sr., never achieved. In 1987, Watson Jr. was hailed by Fortune magazine as the greatest entrepreneur ever, outshining Henry Ford and Bill Gates. With help from Peter Petray, former executive editor of Fortune magazine, Watson Jr. penned this memoir after retiring. He looked back on his life and shared the full story of leading IBM's successful transformation. This autobiography earned joint recommendations from Warren Buffett, the Oracle of Omaha, and Jack Welch, the world's greatest CEO, and was named one of Fortune magazine's 75 must-read business books. Next up, I'll break down Watson Jr.'s legendary life into 3 parts. Part 1. How did Watson Jr. kick off his career at IBM? Part 2. How did he steer IBM to successfully transform and lead the computer era? Part 3. How did Watson Jr. build IBM into a business empire after his father passed away? Let's dive into part 1 first. 1914. Watson Jr. was born in the U.S. His father, Watson Sr., was nearly 40 then, and a top-notch cash register salesman. His mother, Jeanette, was a highly respected local businesswoman. Shortly after Watson Jr.'s birth, Watson Sr. became general manager of the computing tabulating recording company. And that company was IBM's predecessor, drowning in debt and on the brink of collapse.
But Watson Sr. saw huge business potential in their flagship product, the punched card tabulator.
The punched card tabulator was a primitive data processing machine. It proved its worth in the 1890 U.S. Census, accurately tallying the population data in just 6 weeks. Old Watson believed that as various industries in the U.S. continued to develop, the application scope of punched card tabulators would expand. During the Great Depression of 1929, competitors chose layoffs and production halts. However, Old Watson chose to expand production and hire more salesmen. He intensified sales efforts. After that, Roosevelt came to power and implemented the New Deal. Businesses needed to provide various data, information, and accounts to the government, and the government needed to verify and record large amounts of information, thereby stimulating for the huge demand for punched card machines. At this point, IBM held an absolute advantage in both supply capacity and the number of salesmen, thus leaping to become the industry leader. Old Watson was proud of IBM, which he had built from scratch, and he looked forward to his eldest son, Watson Jr., inheriting his business someday. When Watson Jr. was 5 years old, Old Watson took him to visit IBM factories and attend IBM meetings. Even when traveling by train with Watson Jr., Old Watson would seize every opportunity to demonstrate how to interact with people like a gentleman. For example, after washing up, pay attention to keeping the sink clean, for instance, tipping waiters and drivers to express gratitude, and so on. Old Watson also often praised Watson Jr., saying that he would become a great person in the future. Old Watson's expectations brought a lot of pressure to Watson Jr. At about 12 years old, thinking about taking over IBM in the future, Watson Jr. broke down. He ran home crying to his mother and said, "I know Dad wants me to go to IBM, but I really can't do it." After returning home, Old Watson, learning about this, comforted his son, saying that in the future, he could freely choose the career he wanted to pursue. But the next year, old Watson still revealed his true expectations. He made 13-year-old Watson Jr. wear a dark suit and a bowler hat, dressing him up as a little businessman in the same outfit as him, to attend IBM sales meetings together. Why did Watson Jr. break down because of his father's expectations? From his own perspective, it was because he felt a lot of frustration in his life at that time and couldn't identify with himself. One source of frustration was his terrible academic performance.
Especially in high school, Watson Jr. changed schools 3 times, took 6 years, and finally graduated at 19. Another source of frustration. Beat down by academics, Watson Jr. began seeking recognition in sports.
But his hand-eye coordination was terrible, and he was taller and skinnier than his peers, totally not cut out to be an athlete. Third source of frustration, starting at age 13, Watson Jr. developed recurrent depression, a very serious psychological disorder, and the suicide rate among patients is high, yet doctors have no way to help. During severe bouts, Watson Jr. would become mentally confused and lose all willpower, often needing family to plead endlessly before he could barely get out of bed to eat or shower. Once during an episode, Watson Jr. was in such pain that he called his brother Dick over and said, "If I die, you gotta tell Mom and Dad it's not their fault." In response to Watson Jr.'s struggles, old Watson kept encouraging and comforting him, believing he'd become a great man. Watson Jr. didn't say anything out loud, but in his heart, he always whispered back, "That's impossible." After graduating high school, Watson Jr. got rejected by his dream school, Princeton University. In the end, with old Watson's pleading, he got accepted into Brown University. Watson Jr.'s college life was free but confusing. He joined a rich kid fraternity where they partied hard every day, drinking and dancing, living wild and carefree.
During his freshman year, he got hooked on flying planes, stopped going to classes, and sometimes even woke up at midnight to drive to the airfield and fly for an hour.
Near the end of his sophomore fall semester, Watson Jr. got a warning from school. If he didn't pass his finals, he'd be kicked out. Watson Jr. didn't want to get expelled or break his dad's heart, so he started learning self-discipline. On one hand, he got a single room, buried himself in studying, and finally passed the exams, avoiding expulsion. On the other hand, he fought hard against alcohol. Drinking alcohol was something old Watson always hated. Old Watson required all IBM employees not to drink during work hours. Alcohol wasn't allowed at company events or on company property. Under this kind of teaching by example, Watson Jr. often felt guilty and frustrated, proactively confessing his mistakes to old Watson and learning from them. The self-disciplined Watson Jr. also started imitating his father in how he handled people and situations. For example, how to make a good impression, how to chat with others, how to show respect to elders, and so on. After graduation, Watson Jr. joined IBM as a salesman, but he was still lost, unsure what he wanted to do, and his life after joining IBM destroyed the confidence he had just built. Old Watson was too successful. The entire company worshipped him, praised him, and flattered him. Old Watson accepted everyone's admiration, but young Watson was extremely annoyed with the company. This cult-like fanatical atmosphere, combined with the company trying to please old Watson, often gave young Watson special treatment, letting him easily meet sales targets. No one cared about young Watson's ideas. No one cared if he had real talent or knowledge. Young Watson was deeply distressed and fell back into his college playboy lifestyle. Half the day flying planes, half the night in nightclubs. Even during family dinners, young Watson would light a cigarette while his father spoke, then lazily slump in his chair, rolling his eyes and staring at the ceiling. Oh, Matt, quote, He tried to vent his dissatisfaction with old Watson and IBM in similar ways. Both old Watson and his mother tried to talk to young Watson, but it was useless. After 3 years at IBM, World War II broke out, and at 26, young Watson became a pilot in the National Guard, leveraging his civilian flying experience.
Young Watson looked forward to military service because he wanted to escape his father's shadow and succeed purely on his own merits.
In the Air Force, young Watson's first job was promoting the Link trainer to air bases. This trainer allowed pilots to practice flying on the ground and creating free winters. Young Watson got senior officers to write recommendations and showed base commanders crash data comparisons before and after using the trainer, successfully increasing usage sixfold. This achievement caught General Bradley's attention, and young Watson was appointed as his aide by the general. An aide, in essence, was the general's personal assistant and exclusive pilot. Young Watson wasn't satisfied with just being a flying chauffeur. He started proactively writing reports, summarizing people they met during inspections, airbase conditions, and his own observations and thoughts. And General Bradley was very pleased with young Watson, who rose to lieutenant colonel, but many subordinates resented him during this process. They felt young Watson's demands were too high and he was inflexible. Many expressed unwillingness to work with him. Young Watson was deeply discouraged. He felt that if he couldn't even manage his subordinates, he would achieve nothing in the future. He began trying various ways to improve relationships with his subordinates, like thanking them for their work, checking in on each person's mood, taking them out to relax, and treating them to the finest restaurants. So, I think eventually, Watson Jr. successfully won his subordinates' admiration. Overall, his military career helped Watson Jr. overcome the frustrations of his youth and build confidence and self-identity. During this time, he also started a happy family. His wife, Olive, was an independent, cheerful, and kind-hearted model. Understanding old Watson's expectations for Watson Jr., Olive often bluntly pointed out his flaws, prompting constant self-reflection and maturity. In 1945, Watson Jr. ended his military career, believing that doing anything anywhere other than IBM would be underestimating himself. So he chose to return to IBM, this time with clear purpose, ready to lead the company into the electronic computer age. Next, we move to part 2, how Watson Jr. led IBM's successful transformation. IBM had a motto, think, think, think. This was established by old Watson, yet paradoxically, he demanded absolute obedience to his every word. Over time, most managers grew accustomed to blindly following old Watson's orders, afraid to think independently. For example, when old Watson's personal secretary finally saved enough to buy a car, he still habitually ran to seek permission first. And Watson Jr. despised these mindless yes-men around old Watson and harshly disciplined them whenever they erred. Simultaneously, he promoted truth-telling, critical thinking employees, forming his own brain trust. Leading this team, they practiced IBM's motto, not just to sell more machines, but to fundamentally rethink how to build better ones. It was precisely through think, think, think that Watson Jr. steered IBM's successful transformation. When Watson Jr. joined IBM post-281, the first electronic computer, ENIAC, debuted, capturing industry attention. This behemoth occupied 170 square meters, weighed 30 tons, and contained over 18,000 fragile vacuum tubes. Despite its size, it boasted astonishing speed, 5,000 additions per second, versus IBM's punch card machines near 4. At first, both Watsons thought electronic computers were clunky, prone to breakdowns, too pricey, and couldn't compete with IBM. But a few weeks later, while young Watson was strolling with his dad at IBM headquarters, he spotted an engineer who'd built a vacuum tube multiplier that did multiplication 10 times faster than punch card machines. And so, young Watson got a new spark. He pushed hard to launch this multiplier, letting IBM boast to customers about having the world's first commercial electronic calculator. This multiplier became a huge hit after release, selling hundreds of units. IBM doubled down and rolled out an upgraded version, the Model 64 calculator, which handled multiplication and division. It was often teased as young Watson's pet. By reading punch card data, this pet could run 40 programs, nudging IBM a big step closer to computer development. Back to back, these two electronic gadgets were a big favorite with users. This was young Watson's first win at IBM, and it hit him how massive the business potential of electronic tech really was.
But IBM's rivals caught on too.
In 1947, Eckert and Mauchly, key ENIAC researchers, started their own business, vowing to build a new computer within 5 years that totally replaced punch card machines.
With just a spec sheet, they snagged funding from two of IBM's top clients, which really rattled the Watsons.
Old Watson ordered IBM engineers to rush out the new computer first. But after they burned the midnight oil on the plan, he tore it to pieces.
Simple reason. Old Watson had this gut distrust of electronic tech. He even had his team call big clients to talk them out of investing in the new computer.
In 1948, another new tech, magnetic tape, started grabbing eyeballs because it stored info way better than punch cards.
Magnetic tape gave big computers a serious edge. More and more clients and pals started telling young Watson they needed to face the music. Punch card machines were doomed. Fast-track developing big computers. Young Watson took this feedback to heart. He asked loads of IBM experts if they should look into big computers, but they all reckoned punch card machines were better and shot down his idea. Still, he didn't back down. He trusted his own thinking more. He said, "When you need to take action, don't seek opinions from the majority. Even if they're experts, just think deeply, make your own decision. Then stand firm in your conviction."
On the other hand, he believed IBM's experts were outdated, and IBM needed to immediately hire engineers who truly understood electronics.
To make it happen, Watson Jr. went straight to old Watson to argue his case. He bluntly stated, "Even a monkey with a wrench could do the work of IBM's incompetent engineers." Watson Jr.'s brain trust also showed old Watson R&D spending comparisons. IBM was investing nearly 1/3 less than other major companies. Ultimately, Watson Jr. and his team convinced old Watson, and IBM officially began developing mainframe computers. Well, about 30 companies worldwide were competing in electronic computers at the time. How did IBM stand out?
The key was Watson Jr. seizing two military and government collaborations, first during the Korean War.
In June 1950, when the war broke out, old Watson wired President Truman offering IBM's full resources, appointing Watson Jr. as liaison. After studying defense fields like atomic energy and code breaking, Watson Jr.'s team advised skipping prototypes to build a government-ready universal computer. After evaluating, Watson Jr. saw this as a high-risk move. Technically, only about 10 computers existed then, mostly specialized units for tasks like decrypting intel or artillery targeting. Financially, to keep patents, IBM couldn't take government funds, shouldering at least $3 million alone. This was astronomical then. Neither IBM nor any company had attempted such self-funded R&D. Yet Watson Jr. believed risk didn't mean futility. IBM could afford $3 million, and the tech patents held massive commercial potential. Plus, if IBM delivered a unique machine for the government, it would cement IBM's place in computing. To test his judgment, Watson Jr. sent his brain trust with the proposal. They pitched it to government agencies, which responded enthusiastically. Within 2 months, IBM secured 11 orders and lined up 10 potential clients. This cemented Watson Jr.'s resolve. He wouldn't consult IBM's internal experts or debate the $3 million cost with his father. He tapped into old Watson's wartime patriotism, stressing this universal computer was crucial for victory. Ultimately, the project got approved. Meanwhile, IBM's top competitors, Eckert and Mauchly, had a 3-year head start, while IBM lacked experience and was just beginning recruitment. So Watson Jr. accelerated hiring, growing engineers from 500 to over 4,000 in 6 years. Finally, IBM caught up successfully. In December 1952, they launched the Defense Calculator, IBM's first electronic computer, trailing the top competitor's new machine.
By just 1 month.
Now neck and neck with rivals, what did Watson Jr. do to leave them in the dust? This leads to another 1950s opportunity. During the U.S.-Soviet Cold War, after the USSR's first atomic test, the anxious U.S. Air Force planned an advanced air defense against Soviet attacks. They envisioned SAGE, semi-automatic ground environment, covering the entire U.S., operating 24/7, instantly calculating any bomber's position.
Flight path and speed! SAGE demanded unprecedented computing power.
Back then, an 8-hour crash-free computer was considered revolutionary. Yet SAGE required 24/7 operation plus real-time processing of live radar data. Technically, this was real-time processing. Still a formidable challenge even today. After deep thought, Watson Jr. saw real-time processing as a high-reward challenge. Whoever joined this project would crack the tech first, commercialize it, and master mass production. To secure this, Watson Jr. personally courted the SAGE project lead, touring IBM's computer factories and introducing top talent, ultimately winning IBM a spot in the project. Thanks to SAGE, IBM doubled computer sales, built cutting-edge automated factories, and trained thousands of new industrial workers. Crucially, Watson Jr. adapted real-time tech into Sabre, a commercial semi-automatic business-related environment for airlines, banks, retailers, and more. For example, airlines using this system could process bookings, changes, and cancellations 24/7.
This breakthrough system drew massive demand, recouping hundreds of millions in development costs within a year.
Thus, in the 1950s to 60s, through Think, 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 Watson Jr. transformed IBM into the computing era's frontrunner. So what did Watson Jr. do to build IBM into a business empire? That brings us to part 3. When 82-year-old Watson Sr. died in June 1956, IBM's annual revenue was $700 million.
By Watson Jr.'s 1971 retirement, revenue hit $7.05, over tenfold growth.
How did Watson Jr. achieve such explosive growth? 2 reasons: revolutionary management reforms and overcoming major crises. First, management reform. Watson Sr. centralized power, forcing managers to queue for weeks to report issues. Watson Jr. saw this as wasteful, while Watson Sr. dismissed concerns since managers were well paid. Watson Sr. avoided organizational charts, expecting every employee to care about all IBM matters. So, old Watson often assigned a sales manager to handle production tasks, or had a factory manager take on sales duties. He'd even ask people to comment on other departments' affairs. So, he believed these were management tactics learned from his boss during his cash register salesman days, methods that saved IBM from bankruptcy and built it into a giant. But Watson Jr. saw this as utterly impractical and a surefire way to drive away talented managers. When Watson Jr. took over, he scrapped the one-man rule model. He formed a core team of executive VPs and senior managers, delegating significant authority. Unresolved issues rose from senior managers to VPs, then finally to Watson Jr. if needed.
With old Watson still alive then, he feared the family legacy would crumble and opposed decentralization. He constantly criticized Watson Jr.'s judgment, bluntly calling VP Williams, a key ally, untrustworthy.
Calmly, Watson Jr. replied, "Dad, Williams is my best friend. If I misjudged him, I deserve to lose everything." Watson Jr.'s confidence soothed old Watson. After reflection, he finally endorsed the decision.
After old Watson's passing, Jr. deepened reforms, creating IBM's first top-down structure, line staff organization.
This system split into line operations and staff support. Line managers focused purely on hitting production targets and sales goals. Staff support advised on strategy and ensured smooth operations. This framework gave everyone crystal clear objectives, pushing them to innovate solutions. Watson Jr.'s reforms proved effective. In 1957 and 1958, post-Watson Sr., IBM hit record growth and successfully issued $1 billion in stock.
Beyond reforms, let's examine IBM's 2 major 1960s to 70s challenges. chaotic product lines, and a U.S. Justice Department antitrust lawsuit.
First, let's look at IBM's challenge to itself. In the early 1960s, IBM was still growing, but only at a 9% rate. Watson Jr. believed that given computing's vast potential, this low growth signaled structural problems. The issue was actually glaring. Earlier, to spur internal competition, he'd split the computer division in two, leading each to develop new products. But this made every IBM computer a siloed system, with proprietary hardware and software, preventing mix and match. To simplify, Watson Jr. mandated a new line of compatible products. Fortune magazine hailed this as the era's most crucial, forward-thinking, and perhaps riskiest business decision. IBM invested $5 billion, more than the Manhattan Project, facing huge technical hurdles, like organizing programmers for software and assembling computers with integrated circuits. Watson Jr. monitored progress closely, while his heir-apparent brother Dick struggled to solve problems. After deliberation, he replaced Dick with production-savvy Vin Learson. Dick felt betrayed. They reconciled 9 years later. In 1964, the new line launched to acclaim. Billions in products sold out, cementing IBM's dominance. Now, the second challenge, monopoly accusation. In 1969, the U.S. Justice Department sued IBM for monopolizing computing, demanding they end bundled pricing and split into 7 companies. Both demands threatened IBM's existence. Bundled pricing was Watson Sr.'s founding strategy. Whether leasing or selling, IBM bundled hardware, software, and training at fixed prices, easing customer adoption. This pioneered a new market and became the industry standard.
Breaking up the company was unthinkable. Japanese competition was intensifying, and domestic rivals were circling.
If IBM split into 7 smaller companies, 2 generations of effort could be wiped out. The breakup of AT&T proved this could happen.
To save IBM, Watson Jr. launched a series of actions.
First, he spent $750,000 placing IBM's statement in 80 national newspapers to rally public support. Then, to appease the Justice Department, he ended bundled pricing, giving software companies breathing room and launching the commercial software industry. Next, he settled out of court with Control Data Corporation, CDC, the Justice Department's ally. CDC, an IBM rival, held damaging evidence against IBM. This evidence was crucial for the Justice Department's case. After settling, IBM obtained and incinerated the materials, leaving the Justice Department scrambling. Years later, in 1981, the Justice Department dropped the lawsuit. IBM avoided breakup, reformed management, overcame challenges, becoming the world's largest computer firm with 80% market share and $26 billion annual sales. In 1971, after a heart attack, Watson Jr. retired to enjoy life. By then, he'd been happily married to Olive for 30 years.
With 6 children, he sailed to the Arctic, earned a helicopter pilot license, and served as U.S. ambassador to Russia for over a year.
Watson Jr. passed away in 1993 at age 79. For his legacy, we quote Birkenstock's commentary. As our closing note, Birkenstock was a core member of Watson Jr.'s brain trust, witnessing IBM's entire transformation. His verdict is one sentence: Watson Jr. was IBM's savior. All right, that concludes our reading of Father, Son & Co., the autobiography of IBM's architect. Notes are below. See you next time.